In this first episode, this tar-like substance called Promethium X suddenly covers our hero Spider-Man. And at first, it seems that it gives him what any person or any superhero would want. It gives him increased powers. So Spider-Man should be so happy. He's not only a superhero, but he's now a superhero. He can do more than he ever could. He's more powerful than he's ever been. But like everything else in life, everything you get seems to come at a cost. And the cost to Spider-Man is that he loses control over his own will. And where he had been a good, caring, heroic person, suddenly he begins to change. Luckily, Spider-Man's own willpower and his own integrity were strong enough that when the symbiote, having control over him, almost caused him to commit murder, Spider-Man was able to pull back and to realize that he mustn't do this, and somehow, some way, he's got to free himself from the symbiote's control, because all of that power isn't worth it if it means doing harm to another human being. To me, this is one of the most exciting and scary episodes, because in this episode, Eddie Brock has become Venom, and Spider-Man has to go up against Eddie Brock as Venom, against a character that he knows is stronger and more powerful than he is. Now, whether you're a superhero or not, when you have to go up against somebody who has greater power than you have two choices. You run and hide, or you try to do the impossible. And that was the predicament Spider-Man was in, and being the true hero he is, he tried to do the impossible. Just when Spider-Man was confronted not only by Venom, but Venom and Carnage. And Carnage is even worse than Venom, because he started out being a psycho, and he's got all that power. Now they're both against Spider-Man. So when things look totally hopeless for our hero, along comes Iron Man, together with War Machine. So it's the three of them against the two villains who are still probably more powerful than the three of them put together, but at least now Spider-Man has a fighting chance. I remember that line Shakespeare wrote in Julius Caesar, when Mark Antony is standing over the dead body of Caesar, and he addresses the multitudes and he says, "If you have tears to shed, prepare to shed them now." Well, that's the way I feel about this final episode of the Venom Saga, because in this episode we have the incredibly dramatic situation of Eddie Brock as Venom, watching Carnage grab the woman that Brock is in love with, the psychiatrist, who is the one person who had faith in Eddie Brock, and he's about to pull her into the dimensional portal to God knows what kind of fate. And Eddie Brock sacrifices himself by grabbing the girl, saving her, and he gets pulled into that portal himself, giving up his own identity, perhaps his own life, to save the woman he loves. I would like to say more, but I'm too choked up with emotion, so if you'll just give me a moment or two. Thank you. I'm going to let you in on a real secret now, and this must go no further. Any of you who are listening to this on the DVD, you are pledged to silence. A villain is only as dangerous as the writer who writes him makes him be. If I were writing a story with any villain, and for some reason I wanted to end the story with the villain defeating Spider-Man, I would find a way to do that, and then that villain would be his most dangerous opponent. So it really, even though we think of these as real characters, a lot depends on who's writing them. You know, I think one of the reasons for Venom's great popularity, and there are many reasons, but one of the reasons I think is he's so unique. There's really never been a villain like Venom, because he's somebody who can take over a person's personality. Well, we've seen that happen before with hypnotists and things of that sort, but we've never seen it happen visually, where another type of being literally flows over the person and becomes the person and changes the person. Visually, Venom is a great character, and the way Venom does what he does is so startlingly exciting when you look at it that he has to be one of the most unique and one of the most scary villains of all time. You know, it's an interesting thought. If I found a creature like that, a symbiotic creature who could give me superpowers but make me somewhat evil, would I accept that rather strange gift? I think I might try it, because I'm just conceited enough to think that my willpower is so strong that I could overcome his influence, and I would just take the power but still remain the wonderful human being that I am. Wow, you know, if that suit had been attached to the Hulk, I don't think the story would have had a happy ending, because the Hulk is a rampaging beast. At any rate, luckily he stops being the Hulk at a certain time. But if he had that suit, and if he was not only rampaging, but incredibly evil, then I wouldn't go out in the street if I lived in that neighborhood, I'll tell you that. You know those big fangs that Venom has? I would imagine when he has to brush his teeth, the only things that would really do it for him would be if he goes to a car wash place, and those big things that spin around, those big brushes that brush a car. I don't know if the people working in the car wash place would feel very good about handling Venom, but if I were Venom, that's where I would go. It would be the easiest thing. When you talk about Venom, a lot of people have said to me, do you think alien symbiotes could really exist? As far as I'm concerned, anything is possible. We have no idea how many incredible things really exist in the universe. We've only scratched the surface of discovering what really lies around us all over. We don't know half of what's under the ocean yet. We don't know all the things that are deep under the earth, and we haven't even reached any distant stars. So I don't expect that the first Earthling who goes to another planet is going to find a symbiote, but I wouldn't be surprised if they exist, if they don't exist or do exist somewhere in the universe, in the galaxy, in the cosmos, because really the thing that makes writing science fiction so much fun is the fact that anything and everything is possible. The way science is going today and the way computers are evolving, I absolutely think, I am absolutely certain that we will have intelligent robots among us, working for us and working with us in the not too distant future. I mean, right now, there are little robots, you've probably seen them advertised, that you could buy, and it's dressed like a butler, and it'll serve drinks when you have company. There's the robot vacuum that'll vacuum your whole room. It starts in a certain area and goes. Well, those are primitive, but there's no reason why they won't have robots that can do very complex tasks. Look at the complex things that a computer does. If you put that hard drive inside of a robot and give it the right programming, it can do unlimited things. So I'm really surprised that it's taking so long to develop them with the knowledge, the scientific knowledge we have today. I'm surprised there aren't robots among us right now. In fact, I've seen some people that could almost be robots, but um, we, we need not go into that. I think that any bit of literature that kids read that convey any facts or any information can be educational. Um, when Spider-Man was bitten by a radioactive spider those many years ago, you have no idea how many letters I received from fans saying, I went to the library and I read up all about radioactivity, and I read up all about spiders, and I didn't know that they're called arachnids, and I didn't know this and that and the other. So if you can write something that's interesting and that catches a reader's imagination, the reader is certain to go to the library or to the internet or wherever and try to get more information about it, which is why I think reading is one of the greatest things in the world. And reading imaginative fiction is so great because it really expands your own imagination. So often I'm asked, how do you feel when you see a kid walking down the street and he's wearing a Spider-Man costume or a Spider-Man watch or a Spider-Man cap or any of the million Spider-Man things they sell? My first thought is, I hope Marvel is collecting a good royalty on this. But after that, I think, wow, it's just great to think that this little character that we dreamed up 40 years ago or more has remained as popular as he is. And that's a very, very satisfying thought, really. It makes you feel a little bit triumphant to know that you created something years ago and wrote it in such a way that people have enjoyed it and wanted to see more and still enjoy it years later. It's a great feeling. Not only do people all over wear Spider-Man things and play with Spider-Man gadgets, but there are people in Great Britain, in England, not long ago, a man climbed something and suspended himself from a tower in a little elevator type gadget, and he was dressed as Spider-Man, and he was up there in the air protesting something or other. And I remember some years ago in Chicago, somebody who called himself Spider-Man climbed one of the tallest buildings in Chicago. Both of these fellows eventually got arrested, but I think they enjoyed the publicity that they got. The only thing I used to worry about is what if one of them fell and hurt himself? It wouldn't look good for Spider-Man. But luckily, they all survived. Well, I must say I prefer the red and blue suit because I'm a loyalist, and that was the suit we originally gave Spider-Man. It's the suit that the whole world knows and loves, and I like sticking to it. But I will admit, for variety, it was really a lot of fun seeing Spider-Man in his black Venom outfit, so to speak, just so long as I know that he goes back to his regular red and blue suit eventually. I think one of my very first memories is me in a little, I must have been 4 years old or so, in a little cowboy suit that my parents bought me. And they took me to a photographer in the street. There was a man with a camera on a tripod, and for 10 cents he would take your picture, and he had a little pony there. And my parents lifted me up and put me on the pony, and the man took my picture. And I never quite understood why they wanted to take a picture of me on a pony in a cowboy suit, because I wasn't a cowboy, and I really couldn't ride ponies in those days. Then I remember after that, they put me in a sailor suit and took another picture of me a little while later. And isn't that funny? My first memories are me having two photographs taken of me in strange outfits. I really should have a more dramatic memory than that, but those are my first memories. You know, if someone were alone in a room with a giant red button on a table and a big sign saying, "Don't press this button," I think it would be exactly the same as walking in a park and seeing a bench that had been painted and a sign saying, "Wet paint. You've just got to touch it. You've just got to, is it really wet?" And that big red button, if you were in the room and there was nothing else to do, I don't see how you could avoid touching it, especially if it's real life and not just a science fiction or a horror story. If it's a horror story, you better not touch the button. But if it's real life, you'll touch the button and maybe a door will open or a bell will ring. I would take the chance.